The large portion of 66 organizations the United States is exiting are part of the UN system, institutions that play a central role in shaping global policy on climate, development, health, cities and human rights. And these agencies do not operate in isolation. They function as coordination hubs that set global norms, mobilize funding and even guide national policies, particularly in developing economies. One of the most significant withdrawals is from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the foundational treaty that governs international climate negotiations, and the UNFCCC provides the legal and also diplomatic architecture for climate summits, emissions reporting, and also climate finance commitments. Without US participation, the credibility and also the financial muscle of climate negotiations weaken, making it harder to enforce accountability or even push ambitious emissions reductions across the globe. And the US is also exiting UN agencies linked to environmental science and sustainability. These bodies collect global data, assess climate risks, and also help governments plan adaptation strategies. And the loss of American funding and technical engagement is likely to slow scientific assessments and reduce the capacity of vulnerable nations to respond to climate threats, such as rising sea levels, droughts, and even extreme weather events. And another major area of impact is urban development, viewers, because the US withdrawal from UN bodies focused on human settlements and also sustainable cities could disrupt global efforts to manage rapid urbanization. And these agencies support housing, infrastructure planning, and disaster resilience in fast-growing cities across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So, reduced funding may lead to project delays, weaker planning frameworks, and increased vulnerability for urban population. And the exit from agencies working on gender equality and women's empowerment has also raised concerns among humanitarian groups. And these organizations, viewers, plays a very important role in combating gender-based violence, improving access to education and employment, and supporting women in conflict and crisis zones. A reduction in US support could shrink programs that directly affect millions of women and girls worldwide. Meanwhile, population and reproductive health agencies are also among those affected, with US pulling out its financial support, and these bodies deliver maternal health care, family planning services and disease prevention in low-income regions. And historically, viewers, US funding has formed a substantial part of their budgets, and the withdrawal could lead to clinic closures, reduced outreach programs, and gaps in healthcare delivery, particularly in fragile states. And beyond the funding, the US exit also carries symbolic and strategic consequences. American participation has traditionally acted as a stabilizing force within the UN system, shaping agendas, influencing leadership appointments, and also counterbalancing the growing influence of rival powers. Stepping away opens space for countries like China to expand their influence in setting global norms and priorities, and many even warn that this could result in a shift in international standards on climate reporting, labor rights, digital governance, and development financing, moving them further away from US preferences. And once institutional influence is lost, regaining it becomes significantly more difficult. So the withdrawal also complicates coordination during a global crisis. UN agencies often serve as first responders during pandemics, humanitarian emergencies, and climate disasters. So reduced US engagement may weaken response capacity and also slow collective action when swift coordination is very critical. So supporters of administration argue that multilateral institutions have grown inefficient and politicized, and that bilateral agreements offer more direct control and measurable outcomes. However, experts caution that global challenges, especially climate change and health security, cannot be effectively addressed through fragmented nation-to-nation arrangements alone. Now, in effect, the US exit from multiple UN bodies represents more than a budgetary decision. It marks a structural shift in how Washington engages with the world, moving away from rule setting through collective platforms towards selective interest-driven engagement. The long-term global impact will depend on whether remaining nations can fill the leadership and funding vacuum, or whether weakened institutions lead to slower progress on issues that demand global cooperation. Well, the US has exited from 66 global bodies, and this could have a major impact on several underdeveloped nations which continue to rely on these institutions for various facilities, including healthcare and much more. And US funding had been also very, very critical to supporting these nations, but the exit could now mean that China could influence many global reforms through these global bodies which the US has exited from. And ever since Donald Trump has taken over, he has cut funding to several UN arms as well.